Hello, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce our presenter. It's Andrew Sanderbeck. Andrew Sanderbeck has experienced life as a commercial disc jockey, retail manager, corporate training manager, and an adjunct professor. Today, he thrives as an introverted entrepreneur, spouse, parent, and grandparent who loves animals, people, books, music, spiritual conversation, quiet time, and travel, and the order varies from day to day. People tell Andrew that they love his inspirational online publication, the Not Every Friday News Minute, which, like Andrew, does not go out every Friday. So I will just really briefly say that this webinar will be recorded and will be posted on Utah State Library's archive page. And if you have questions during today's webinar, you can put them in the chat or you can ask them directly to Andrew. And without any further ado, I'll turn the time over to Andrew. Thank you so much, Andrew, for being here.
Thanks, Marilee. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Great to have you along. And yes, thank you for using the chat area. We are going to use that quite a bit today. If you would, just go ahead and type in the chat area right now and let me know that you are hearing me okay. I am coming to you today from St. Petersburg, Florida. So not my normal mountains of North Carolina. And, you know, you never know with the internet. So always good to check in with you guys and make sure that that you're getting everything okay. So it looks like we're doing good. Okay. I'm seeing folks from all around the country. So pretty exciting on that. So our topic today having to do with leadership skills for the newer supervisor. And if you got the PowerPoint in advance and you had a chance to look at it, or just by looking at the description, these are some of the things that I want to look at during our time together today. And just a reminder that this program is scheduled for 90 minutes. I am not sure that we'll need all 90, but I didn't want to rush it in 60. So thank you to Marilee for being flexible and allowing us to have a little more time with you guys today. So we're going to look at, you know, if you guys have listened to me at all, you know, I am a big advocate of building relationships and just really how important relationships are in life in general, but certainly within an organization, you know, to me, it's everything. And, you know, and I really think a lot of our success really depends on the level of relationships that we have and that we build and that we nurture. So I want to look at leadership maybe in a different way than we've looked at it in the past, and looking at that in how we can use leadership to build those relationships and, you know, commitment and trust and those things that obviously are real important if we're going to be successful. So we'll look at collaboration. I got some ideas there on things that we can do to help with our team or our department with regards to setting goals and objectives. Obviously, expectations need to be clear. And if expectations are not clear, then, you know, I think we're in trouble right away, but that's okay. Going to look at communication. Once again, you know, put that up with relationships for me. I really think that anyone that is in a management, leadership, supervision position, you're only going to be as good as your communication skills. And I really think that that is a lifelong skill. It certainly has been for me. Now at 61 years of age, you can always learn better ways to communicate and different techniques and, you know, different things that you can try. And so we're going to look at some best practices in doing that. And I'm also throwing up some quotes here for you as well. I'm also a quote lover with regards to that. Want to look at influencing others. If you're not familiar with the term POI, well, I guess I'll get you going with it right now. A POI is a person of influence. And we recognize people of influence not by titles. There are actually people normally that don't have titles. So a person of influence would be the person that people go to when they have questions, when they're upset, when they are confused. Every team that I've worked with, every department that I've worked in, there have been POIs. And I want to talk with about their importance, and then also the others that maybe are not those POIs, but certainly influence is one of the really critical skills in leadership that I want to make sure that we talk about today. I gave you an assessment, or actually Marilee did, but I sent her the assessment yesterday from Dr. Tony Alessandra, and it's called Enhancing Your Daily Interactions. Uh, you know, Maybe one of the hard things about communication is just that we're all different. We all have different personalities, we all have different styles, and and we have biases. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and so what I love about Dr. Tony's tool is it really helps us to understand our style, but I also hope that will help you to understand the styles of others that you work with. And I certainly hope and encourage you to give that assessment to others. And Dr. Tony has given me permission to share that. So, I'll go through what all the different things mean and the characteristics of each style. And certainly you can share that. And then also, I know that I also gave Marilee the PowerPoint to distribute in a PDF form, and then the information on the different styles will be contained in that as well. You may want to have folks listen to this webinar to also get my verbal take on things, but good stuff there. It's a tool that I've used now. Gosh, has it been that long? Almost 20 years now, and I just think there's such great value in it. And the other thing that I love about the work that I do is that the information that we're talking about today, yeah, it's designed for the workplace, but this stuff, I mean, you can use it in your personal life. I think there's so many areas in life that we can use this type of information. And so I do hope you'll think bigger as well. When I look at like Dr. Tony's work, relationships with my wife, relationships with family, helping me to understand, their communication style, my daughter's style, her husband's style. They're all different. It's so interesting that in my family of 5 kids, that we have 4 different styles. And, it really enlightened me to understanding why my one brother communicates this way, why my sister is more this way. So once again, don't let this just be work only. I think there's so much more here that you can take away from this for all areas of life. And then we'll look at more effective meetings. I'm a big proponent of something called 5 minutes with Andrew, and obviously it would be 5 minutes with Debbie, or 5 minutes with Joseph, or whatever that may be. But having 5 minutes each week with my every individual in my team or my department. And at one point that was pretty difficult because I had upwards of like 60 people. But just, the 5 minutes of, it was a check-in of how you're doing. And, sometimes it didn't last 5 minutes, and that was okay. But I'll get into that. And then just talking about team meetings as well. So that's what I've got lined up for you. There are going to be certainly opportunities for you guys to be busy in the chat area. And, I love interaction. So thank you guys for being interactive. And, bottom line, thank you for being here. It's my really blessing to be able to present to you. So the first area I want to talk about has to do with building relationships, and how do we inspire that commitment and trust within, our department, within our team. Because certainly without it, I think we're probably, not going to be doing much leading because these are really critical components in making that happen. And then just looking at, how do we make other people's lives better? And I love the book Servant Leadership. I love Robert Greenleaf's approach here. And what he did was, and I'll put up some verbiage here, but he looked at the quote unquote leadership models that were out there. And, he just thought there's got to be a better way. And I love this reminder that, we look at these different leadership models, we look at managing models. And I think it's sometimes, it's easy to say, oh, well, that's the way that it has to be. And my thinking is, no, it doesn't. You know, there are some managing models out there that are very authoritarian that, I think are awful. And, there are, people that micromanage and, man, not for me. Um, so I prefer more of a collaborative. I prefer more of a, let people do their work and be there to help them type of approach. And so when he wrote the book Servant Leadership, and he started to look at these leadership, styles that were out there, and do they really work, and was there a better way? So that really led him down the path to writing this book and putting out the information that's been really quite popular since the book was written. And so he looks at, in servant leadership, it's my needs are second. My goals are secondary to, in essence, to the team, to the department, and how can I help them to succeed? And I love the Zig Ziglar quote that says, "The quickest way to be successful is to help other people succeed." And I have just embraced that and have loved that quote for years. How can I help others succeed? Because when you guys succeed, if you can take away just one piece of information from this program today that you can apply, then to me, that's success. And you know what? When you succeed, I succeed. And I just love that whole mindset. And I think that, leaders with that mindset certainly aren't as focused on power or control, or those different things that are out there. And so, I hope you guys will take a little further look at servant leadership, past when I'm done with you today with this program. So encouraging people, serving others as the focus over my personal gain, sharing power, sharing authority. And obviously, look, I know, because I've been involved in many teams, many organizations, you obviously have to have the right people. And, if I don't have the right people in place, then, there may not be as much power sharing as I would like. And I acknowledge that. But part of that, too, is taking the people that I have and seeing if they can be groomed and putting in that time and putting in that energy, to see if that can be done. So servant leadership to me is about not me first. It's not about power. It's not about control. It's focusing on the growth and the well-being of others. And by the way, that may not just be your department or your team. I'm talking about the other stakeholders in the organization, whoever they may be. And so the bottom line I love here, excuse me, if people are growing, then they desire to perform and achieve. And they have more capability to accomplish things, and therefore they're really serving in return. And it becomes a cycle of this positive service and this performance. So I have a question for you. What actions have you seen in your organization, or maybe even in another organization, that demonstrate servant leadership? So go ahead and put that over in the chat area, and I will look for some of your answers. So once again, what actions have you seen? Not talk, because remember, talk is cheap. But what actions have you seen that demonstrate servant leadership, either in your current organization or maybe even another organization? So I will mute out for a little bit and I will look for your answers in the chat area, and let's see what you got. isn't it interesting? I'm looking at your answers and how many times I'm seeing the word listening, and just the power of taking time to listen to people, helping them to feel included in the process of what's going on, sometimes in decisions, um, with what's going on. And a couple of you have commented about COVID and the restrictions that, have been put into place. And, that how important that is, how important it is to feel included. I don't know if you guys know, but I'm chairman of our board of trustees in Haywood County in North Carolina. And one of the frustrations that we've had with this whole COVID process has been that many times, and we're a county system, so many times we're just not getting enough information from our county as to when are we going to reopen. Which, by the way, we've been reopened for a while now, but for a while it was limbo. And it was really hard on our director. It was hard on our staff as to the unknown, and not having answers and not getting answers from, the county, because quite frankly, they're figuring it out too. So, but, and then I know that we had some feeling of that, that people weren't listening to us, or we didn't feel like our questions or comments were being considered or heard. And that's tough. So I love those comments, and reminder to all of us of the power of listening in what we do. And so other comments here about asking to collaborate, bringing back staff meetings, the different bosses that we've had, working with employees, listening, didn't try to micromanage. Good. So, part of what we need to demonstrate, in essence, is we need to model the behavior that we want. And so your comments tell me that you have seen this type of behavior, and that you see, the good and the bad, and sometimes the ugly that goes on. I was recently talking with my daughter about some supervision experience that she had, and she brought up a past boss that was, just not a really good manager. And I said to her, I said, Stephanie, why do you think, or what do you think that we can learn from a manager that, that we think is bad, or, whatever we want to, put our label on there. And, because I've had my share, I've had the boss that steals your ideas. I've had the micromanaging boss. I've had the great disappearing boss. I could, probably give you a list. And what I wanted her to see was that even the bad bosses teach us something. And many times the bad boss teaches us how not to do it. And I think there's a gift there. And I think there's a reminder that, that in the position that we're in, that, oh, yeah, I remember so-and-so, and that wasn't good. And so, it's taking the experience, whether it's good or bad, and it molds who we are. And so, it, I could tell you some of those situations were pretty painful. And actually the one with the boss that kept stealing our ideas, I actually left that that organization just because it violated my morals. It violated my values, that someone would do that. And apparently it was okay. And so, at some point, and I actually have this conversation, a few times a year with people that I talk with about, their situation that they're in and different things. And the question that I ask is your situation going to change? And if it's not, and you can honestly assess it and say, my manager, my organization, whatever, isn't going to change, then you need to look at you. Either you're going to tolerate the situation, or you need to look at change. And I know that that's not easy, but at some point, I think we have to acknowledge, this situation isn't going to change. And if so, then it's up to me, and what I can do moving forward. I don't do well with very authoritarian bosses. I got to be honest. They challenge me, not necessarily in a good way. All right, so next one, collaborating with your team when it comes to setting goals and objectives. Now, I did mention this earlier. Expectations have to be clear. So to me, that's number one. If expectations are not clear, then we have a bigger problem before we ever get into trying to collaborate to set goals and objectives. And I love the comment from Kara here about I've learned way more from the bad bosses. It's true. And there are, let's see, what's this? There are even bosses who are good for some and bad for others. Yes. And I totally agree, Natalie. There are some people that like a more authoritarian approach. It's just not my style, and I know it, and I know how I react to it. And there are some people that need it, and there are some people that probably like it. Just not for me. That's okay. So I gave you a little grid here with setting these collaborative goals with people. And once again, I'm kind of looking at this from a team leader, team member type of look here in this graphic. But I love identify first, what are the common goals? And then understanding, making sure that everybody understands not only the goal, but how their role applies to, accomplishing the goal and how it affects others within our organization. With regards to examination, we can look at past projects, and see what kind of happened there and what were our successes. And, I call them next times. What are the things that, we might do differently next time? Did I not prepare people? That's happened before, where maybe I didn't give them everything that they needed as the team leader or the manager, so I learn in the process. And then I'm a big fan of agendas. I'm a big fan of action plans as well. And so certainly before meetings, I want to make sure that we have an agenda, that we understand what the goals of the meeting are. We understand what the goals of the project are. And I certainly do believe that giving it to them in writing certainly will help them to focus, on what's going on. So to me, I'm still a paper hound in that regard. And I think, people all learn differently. And so I acknowledge some people are more oral and some people are more kinesthetic, meaning, that they need to touch it, and see some people are more visual. And so I kind of look at, when I'm distributing information, am I making sure that I'm giving it to them, in all of the ways that people learn? And sometimes that can be challenging, and sometimes it's a little extra work on my part, but that's okay. To me, that's part of good communication. Making it safe to collaborate. I have been in organizations where it wasn't safe, and and it pretty much just shuts everybody down. Why would I want to collaborate if it's not safe? So, does it feel safe to collaborate in your team, in your department, in your organization? How are new ideas looked at? How do we treat people that maybe question a process or question how something's done? In my organization, I advocate strongly continuous improvement. And it's something that I think great leadership does. In essence, continuous improvement says, look at every process, look at every method, look at everything that we do, and assume that it can be done better. And I love it. I have 6 staff spread out around the country. I don't see any of them in person, and except, if I go travel to see them. And I love it that they will come to me with an idea on how we can do something better. And they know it's safe. And they know that it doesn't mean the way we're doing it is bad. It doesn't mean that the person that came up with the process is bad. Excuse me. It just means that we've got an idea. And maybe this might work. Maybe it might not work. And do you see how safe that is? And do you see how it encourages us to be better? So I love organizations. I love supervisors and managers that talk with their people about continuous improvement. So is there a policy that we could improve? Now, this, I'll give you a little history on this here. I do have certification in Six Sigma. So that's kind of where I got started with this many years ago. And then you may have heard the terms lean or Kaizen. The principles here have to do with streamlining processes and minimizing waste. And Kaizen means good change or continuous improvement. And so, to me, I think, especially to help us to adapt and to be more flexible and not, this is the way we've always done it, which just drives me out of my mind. Because the way that we've always done it doesn't mean that it's the best way to do it. It just means that's what we're comfortable with. To have these conversations, you start off by letting people know that it's safe, that we want your ideas, that we want to look at ways that we can improve. And we talk about how can we streamline processes, because being more efficient means less stress on everyone. And I hope you see that. And that's how, I think that's how you sell it. I think you sell change two ways. It saves people time because everybody says they don't have enough time, and it helps to minimize stress. How would I not say yes to something that gave me those two, positives to work with? So, if we can minimize waste, if we can streamline work processes, if we can minimize mistakes, what a win-win. Those are conversations that I want to have with people and making that happen. So there are two types of, in essence, continuous improvements. So I've got incremental and I've got breakthrough. And I just want to walk through these quickly with you. The majority of continuous improvement activities that you're going to be involved in are going to be more incremental. So I'll go ahead and I'll explain this. Incremental has to do more with the smaller issues. Breakthrough would have to do with larger issues, larger items that, maybe the decision needs to be made bigger organizationally, maybe need to be made at the top of the organization. But many times the incremental stuff are things that we can do within our own team, within our own department, and different things like that. So think of small tweaks to a process or to a method, to a something that we have going on where maybe a problem is found. Incremental things usually cost less. They usually don't require a lot of staff time. So they're done faster. There's fewer risks and downsides to making the decision to do things. I like the comment here, the initial step with change is a big stress hurdle before we see the minimized stress, less hesitations with change. Yeah. Change takes many people into the unknown, and not a lot of people are comfortable with the unknown, or not a lot of people are comfortable having to leave their comforts behind and try something new. So I get it. Yet, I think if we can continuously show people that the changes that we're making are saving time, are minimizing stress, are solving the problems, that we're not just putting Band-Aids on things and then, problems come back again. I think that's how we get people on board, with what we're doing. So incremental changes are the small ones. We see a problem with a process and we make an adjustment. We see a problem with a policy and we talk about, policies many times are more organizational. and what they need to change. And so that could get into more of a breakthrough. So think about small change that you may have going on. I gave you an example here of an interlibrary loan process. So it wasn't something big enough in our library where we needed to call a meeting or, drop everything. Uh, Yet, we couldn't leave it alone as well. So, we made a decision to make an adjustment to the process, to relieve the problems, and, we were able to go on from there. And so that's what I'm talking about with regards to small tweaks, small changes in what's going on. And then I just kind of like the quote here, continuous improvement's not about the things you do well, that's work. Continuous improvement is about removing the things that get in the way of your work. The stress, the headaches, the bottlenecks, that's where continuous improvement really comes into play. So if I were to ask you to name one bottleneck in a process that you have going on right now, where do things slow down? Where are things not getting done? That's kind of how we define a bottleneck. Then, that's where I think your attention needs to go. So where are things stopping? Where are things slowing down in a process that we need to tweak it, that we need to look at? Or where is just a process broken down, that we know it's not working? This is where we need to listen to staff. This is where we need to listen to, them telling us, we're having this problem again. We're having this problem again. When I hear again, I'm like, okay, again means that we may have thought we fixed it, but we didn't. Or maybe we thought we could ignore it, but we can't. So those are the things that we can look at tweaking. Maybe sometimes it's going to require a bigger change, as we look at it. So the breakthroughs here are large changes. And this, many times requires more time and money, and may require in big revisions to what's going on. Give you an example, in our library, at our last board meeting, we were looking at revamping our circulation policy. That's a breakthrough continuous improvement. The circ policy was old. It had not been updated in years. Our circ department and a lot of library staff went through and really did a good job and brought it to the board for our thoughts. And so, that's one that's, gosh, like 2 months in process now, to give you an idea. So that's a bigger revision. Those are things we look at and we would call a breakthrough in what's going on with that. So I want you to think about this, and please put your thoughts over in the chat area. Obviously, the coronavirus has changed a lot for us in our profession, in our libraries. For an example, we weren't doing curbside before COVID. We've tweaked a lot of things online, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like you to list the change and then list, is it incremental or breakthrough? And I'll take a look at your comments here in the chat area. Thank you guys for being so interactive. Christy, your comment about if it works, why change it attitude is exactly why continuous improvement works. And it's exactly why I really encourage people to, in essence, change the attitude. The attitude isn't no longer, if it isn't broke, don't worry about it. The attitude is everything we can do can be done better. And if that's the case, then let's throw out ideas, and let's see what we can do to make that happen. And the comment here about a lot of times the process is slowed by working with other departments, then to me, that's on the manager or the supervisor, who needs to work with the other departments and talk with them about, do we need to put together some people from each department to talk about their frustrations, and what's going on. Now, not every manager wants to play along, and I honor that. There are some that, that would just rather either be in denial or, not want to know that they're the problem, quote unquote. I'm seeing a lot on online things here. Zoom programming, online programming, story times, designing and implementing 2 new to us services, good. Homebound delivery, registering patrons by phone has been a breakthrough. Yeah, I mean, COVID it's forced us to get away from this is how we've always done it. And, to me, I think that's good. I think libraries in general need to continue to evolve. And I'm sorry that it may have required a pandemic to do it, but it's really made us look at ourselves, and it's made us look at how we can better serve our communities. So, I love the quote that says, "Don't waste a crisis." And to me, there is such opportunity here, and I see many of you are grabbing onto it. One major change was staff moving to remote and how well they functioned. Good for you guys. I know remote's been hard for folks. That, I think probably was one of the more frequent challenges I heard about was, just the remote working and how we're doing it. Registering patrons by email was a lot easier. Okay, offering services that are outside traditional library standards. Love that. It's not much more work for staff, and we're serving a demographic that have needs that we've not previously addressed. We call that win-win-win. Conduct the majority of our programs virtually. We're getting a smart board for future programs. Curbside had both incremental and breakthrough. I would agree with you, Wendy. When I think about curbside for us, I certainly think the concept was breakthrough in that. And then same with you. Like 1 week into curbside, we were like, ooh, this isn't quite going the way we thought it was going to go. And so then we had to put in the incremental steps to do that. Book bundles, redistributing work depending on who can work on site. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, who owns what and how do we fix the problems? Yes. And I think it's made us look internally as well at our own processes, at our own leadership. And some have been good, and some have. I've heard complaints. Flexibility of the majority of staff. Good. Incremental be curbside ordering books, arranging pickups, story time on Facebook. Good. All right, you guys get it. I love this. Using new ways to communicate with our team, Zoom and Slack. Oh, interesting. The kind of the growth of curbside is Natalie's comment. RFID. Good. Okay. Joining audio and ebook consortiums. All right. Good stuff. Okay. So you get it. You see it. And I love that you were able to break it down. You see incremental versus breakthrough. And once again, I just challenge you to keep continually improving, because your community wins, your library wins, etc. Give you an idea of how I think. I think in terms of why. Many leaders are great at communicating what. I'm a big fan of, I need to know the why. And I really think people need to know the why. Why gets us buy-in. You can tell me what and you can tell me how. But I think real buy-in many times takes why. So when you are talking with people about continuous improvement, and once again, I'm going back in my head to that comment about, well, the process works, or, that's the way we're doing it. That's the way we've always done it. They're going to need to see benefit. I do think people need benefit. They need to understand how, this change benefits them to get on board. So if I talk with them about efficiency and accuracy and being more effective, I'm sorry, but blah, right? Oh, we're going to be more efficient. Great. How many times I've heard that? And we're not. We're going to be more accurate. Really? Those things don't sell me. What sells me is you're going to save me time. What sells me is that there's going to be less stress. What sells me is there's going to be fewer problems. There's going to be fewer mistakes. That to me, and I call it benefit language, is how we need to communicate. Once again, every process can be improved. And that's the message that we really initially need to get out. And that there is a place for staff, there's a place for everyone in helping us to improve. And then you go back to the why. If you've not seen Simon Sinek, I'm going to put it in the chat area here. Simon Sinek. Ooh, gosh, I think I'm misspelling his name. It's a TED Talk called How Great Leaders Inspire. Give me a yes or no if you've seen that video in the chat area. Simon Sinek, How Great Leaders Inspire. It's about like a 12-minute video. Most TED Talks are like 12 minutes or less. And you may want to look up, he talks about the golden circle. And he talks about, the majority of people can tell you, almost everyone can tell you what they do. And what I mean by that is in the workplace. And a lot of people can tell you how they do it. But the majority of people can't tell you why. And he says that's the big disconnect. And I love his phrase. The phrasing he uses, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Now, buy is not purchase. Buy could be buy-in. Buy could be involvement. Buy could be enthusiasm. Once again, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And he says that most organizations, and I believe in, fail because they tend to communicate what, but they don't communicate why. And, sometimes they communicate how. But even looking at, and we had a great conversation at a board meeting recently where our library director passed out a bunch of new marketing materials. Like we got, I think it's called Brain Quest and some other new things online that we were doing. And I looked at our marketing materials and they were all what? This is what it is. And I said, you know what? Who cares? So you have Brain Quest. Who cares? Because there's no why here. There's nothing that is going to make me want to go online. It just tells me what it is. Okay, great. Who cares? So what? I love so what, by the way. Okay, well, this is what it is. And my answer is, so what? So why should I care? Why would I want to do that? So think about this. Think about in your communication how you can better communicate the why. And the why to me a lot of times is benefit language. A lot of times it's asking them questions, how do they see this benefiting them? Because I can't assume that what I see as benefit, they'll see that as well. So I like to ask questions. Well, how do you see this helping your work? And see what their answers are in doing that. But once again, get away from just telling people what. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Man, I love that quote. And it's so true. Because this is not just about staff. This is about our users. This is about our community. When they understand the why, they're much more loyal. When they understand the why, they're much more connected to us. Okay. Best practices in communication within the organization is where I want to take you next. So there are, in essence, three channels that go on in an organization, just as there are, in essence, there's communication upward, there's communication downward, and then there's communication laterally that goes on. But I love this formal, informal, and unofficial as well. Because a lot of times things go on unofficially that we need to be aware of. And I know one of the great mistakes that I made as a new supervisor was that I initially told my staff that I didn't want to know what the gossip was. I didn't want to hear it. That was a huge mistake because there are some things that go on with gossip, and mostly gossip is a lateral thing, but I mean, it can go across the organization. But there are some things in gossip that I can ignore, but there are some things that need to be addressed. And so for me to take the initial approach of, well, I don't want to hear about the gossip, was a huge mistake. Because there are times that I think that as leaders, as supervisors, that we do need to jump in and we need to say, you know what, gang, this is not true. What you're hearing, what's out there, I just want you to know that we need to put a stop to this right now. And some things need clarified as well. One of the hard parts of communication is how communication changes as the information gets passed through. It's kind of like the old telephone game we used to play. All right, so upward, downward, and sometimes called lateral communication. I want to talk with you mainly here about framing. If you're not familiar with this concept, I think you're going to see a lot of value in it. If you are familiar with it, it's going to be a good reminder for you to understand how framing works regarding the audience that you're going to be speaking to. So if I am speaking upwards, I'm speaking to my manager, I'm speaking to, whoever that may be. How I frame what I'm going to say is going to be very different if I'm communicating downward or if I'm communicating laterally to other supervisors and what's going on. So I really want you to think about, first of all, we focus on framing because we want to have success in our communication. Now, success can take on different outcomes. I could be looking for agreement. I could be looking for commitment. I could be looking for buy-in. I could be looking for influence. There are a lot of reasons of why I may want to do this. But a lot of times it has to do with, getting people on board with what we're doing. And part of being a supervisor is that, we're kind of caught in that middle position of where we answer to the people above us. And we also need to make sure that, the people that report to us are, doing what the people above us want. So we need to look at the perspective of our audience. And then I love the question, who am I trying to manage the meaning of this communication to? Because if you are talking to me, the last question that you want me to ask is, well, how does this apply to me? Because if I'm asking that question, you've already lost me. You've lost me. I'm like, whatever. So are we framing our communication? And by the way, I'm not just talking about in person. I'm talking about your emails. I'm talking about the meetings. I'm talking about all the different things that we do to communicate. So I put up this COVID graphic here. We've heard these things time and time again. Wear your mask. Wear it over your mouth and nose. Avoid crowds. Stay 6 feet away. Wash your hands often. We have to realize that there is this pandemic fatigue that's going on. And I'm not just talking about for the community. I'm talking about for staff. Probably for you. I know it's affecting me. How many of you are tired of wearing a mask? Maybe I shouldn't ask that question. How many of you are tired of, I can tell you what we're tired of, and that is disinfecting and cleaning. Oh my gosh. So, especially in fatigue, areas where we are right now, how important our communication is, and making sure that, that it's done in a way that people understand, and they understand the importance to them and the relevance to them. Why do we wear a mask? Why do we, stay 6 feet away? Why are we washing our hands? Well, it's to protect everyone on staff. Why do we enforce these things with our patrons who sometimes, don't like it? Well, once again, my goal is to protect everyone. And that's why, we have these rules in place. That's why our county has these rules in place and what we do. So downward communication a lot of times has to do with implementing goals or strategies or changes, making expectations clear, job instructions, procedures and practices, giving people performance feedback. Those are common things that we would see in downward communication, clarifying things that, that are going on. Certainly too, though, not on that list, to me, is morale. It's communicating positive. It's communicating, I love this saying, catch people do something right. Many supervisors catch people doing things wrong. And my mindset has always been behavior that is rewarded is behavior that is repeated. So if I catch you doing something right and I acknowledge that, then I have a really good chance of seeing you do that again. And, and that's part of performance feedback, and I get it. But, so many times that's what our downward communication looks like. Upward communication, here we're talking to our manager, our bosses, whoever they may be, about problems. We're certainly having problem conversations with our own staff as well. Suggestions for improvement, our performance reports, different things like that that are going on. So those are kind of the common discussions. You could add more to that list as well. Lateral can be within our department, but also, so I put up there intra and inter. And for the comment that was going on earlier about, the different bottlenecks or slowdowns that could be in different departments, that's where our interdepartmental meetings need to take place, and to have conversations about those slowdowns and the different things that are going on there. But normally, those are the three different types of communication that we see going on. Now, what I'm going to teach you next here is something that I've taught in probably 30 countries at least. And you know what? It doesn't matter the language. It doesn't matter the culture. The basic of communication is this. There's a sender, there's a receiver. We have a sender who is sending a message. We have the person that receives the message. And the only way that the sender knows if their message was received properly, correctly, whatever term you want to use, is the feedback that they get. And I have up there verbal communication, but I will tell you this is the same with the email. I send you an email, and unless I get feedback from you that tells me that you have understood, silence doesn't mean you understood. No response doesn't mean you understood. So there has to be some basis for feedback. The other thing to remember here is that how you communicate a message and how people receive it. And what I mean by that is I have 61 years of life experience. So my 61 years is going to affect how I receive your message because I'm putting it through my life experiences. I'm putting it through my work experiences. I'm putting it through, I admit it, I have biases. I do. We all do. And it affects how I come to an understanding of your message. Did you ever go to a movie with someone and you come out of the movie and it's like the two of you just like saw two totally different movies? Give me a yes or no if you've ever done that. It's like, oh, well, I saw this and I saw that and I saw that. Well, neither of you are right or wrong. It's just how we, in essence, took the information, put it through our life filters, and came out with that information. I don't remember what Star Wars movie it was, but I remember going to the Star Wars movie and I'm like, that was one of the most spiritual movies I've ever seen in my life. And my friends were looking at me like I was crazy. They're like, what are you talking about? That's how I perceived it. That's what I took away from it. So my point here is don't assume people understand your message just because you sent it. We need to make sure that we get feedback. And let me be clear. One of your biggest challenges is going to be managing your boss. It's managing the person that manages you. And here, communication to me, I think, can get even trickier. Don't you love that? You get to manage your boss as well as other people. It's true. Let's just put it out there in what we're doing. So, clear communication. I want you to think about just the past month, if possible. And where was your communication maybe not as clear as you think it could have been? Or where did you get feedback that people were confused? Or where did you get feedback that, that maybe people didn't fully understand what you were trying to tell them? Okay, once again, I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying, shame on you. That's why I said communication to me is a lifelong skill. We're going to continue to improve that skill and what's going on. So did you send out an email and it confused people? Okay, good for you. What are you going to do differently the next time? To me, I'm sorry, but to me, email is a train wreck waiting to happen. There's very little tone of voice. There's no body language. There's no real-time communication. So, how can you not expect confusion? How can you not expect people to misinterpret an email? To be really careful with email. And I'll give you my rule of thumb. No more than one message in an email, no more than one point that you want to make in an email. I just got an email. Where did I get this from? Oh, I don't even remember, but it was 8 paragraphs and like 6 different points. And I thought, just shoot me now. This is painful. And there's no way, there's no way I'm going to process 6 points of information. Ain't happening. So keep it to one major point. And if you need to send multiple emails, or if you have, my rule of thumb is that if you have made more than one major point that you need to talk about, it may not be an email anymore. That may need to be a standing meeting or a phone call or something. I think it's too easy to do email. And I understand the advantages of email. I love documentation. I get it. And it's quick. I get it. But, sometimes I just think we can cause more problems by using that tool. And once again, because I don't have body language, I don't have you there to answer questions. Most times I don't get tone of voice. I do think communication can get pretty muddied in what we're doing. I wanted to give you a 5-step process here on communication just to consider when you're putting these things together. So number 1 is making your objectives clear. If you are not clear, then that's your first step. You got to make sure you are absolutely clear on what it is that you're trying to communicate. Now I have on here with regards to, I was thinking more about upward when I was doing this. So communicating the needs and interests of your manager. I'm thinking here about you're talking with your manager, but think about, downward as well and what's going on with that. And then number 2, having to do with, what's the facts? I love Just the Facts Man, by the way. That's when I get into communication styles, that's the directing styles motto is Just the Facts Man. And there are some people you're going to talk with that they don't want all the stuff. Just tell them the facts. But you need to be clear, what's the objective? What's the facts? How are you supporting what you're saying? Once again, either upward or downward, because I need to know, where you're coming from and what it is that you're doing. And then asking for and responding to questions. And I think you need to be comfortable knowing that there are going to be questions you can't answer. And my best response to that is, let me look into that and I'll get back with you. I'm not going to make stuff up. Thank you for that question. Let me look into it and I'll get back with you. Because sometimes people come up with stuff that I haven't thought of and you haven't thought of. That's okay. So probing for agreement. So what do you think? What do you like about this idea? What don't you like? Remember what I said earlier, without feedback, you don't know where your communication's going. So probing for agreement is a way to make sure, or to have a good idea, that they understand where you're coming from. Many times, though, they may be coming from where they're coming from. And so probing for agreement kind of helps to bridge that a little bit. So what other questions do you have? What concerns would you have about this? Those are ways of probing for agreement. What do you think? What do you like about this? What don't you like about this? And then summarize and confirm the conclusion. So in our discussion, we talked about the need to change the process in interlibrary loan. And I've proposed that we make this tweak, make this adjustment to what we're doing. Are you okay with that? Okay. Are we clear that that's the way that we're going to proceed? And I will introduce that to staff at our meeting tomorrow. In this case, I'm talking to the manager or maybe a team lead within the department, and they say yes, and we're good. And I say, great, I will put that in writing and get that to you. And then I will keep you up to date on the change and how things are going. Okay? And Joseph says, as long as you actually get back to them. Absolutely. Well, if we don't get back to them, do you see that you violated your word? And your word is really what people are going to judge you on? I mean, my mind is we're only as good as our word. And if we don't keep our word, that hurts us and what we're doing. Give me a yes or no. Did you have time to do the assessment that I sent you? I know that it got too late because I didn't get it out to Marilee till yesterday, and that was my bad on that. Oh, good. Many of you were saying yes. Awesome. I love this because it really is important to understand communication styles. And Dr. Tony's assessment really is one of the leaders that are out there. I usually save this for the end, but I'll give it to you now. This is the #1 tool used by marriage counselors in the United States. Is that pretty wild? And I, so much in relationships obviously has to do with communication. And there are different styles. Some styles I struggle with more than others. You probably do as well. And so that's why I love this tool. And once again, there's Dr. Tony. And this comes from a program called New Relationship Strategies. And in essence, he tells us that there are 4 styles. There's a relating style, there's a socializing style, there's a thinking style, and there's a directing style. And he's given some terms to them. And then when you did your graphing on your scoring, you had the ID line and you had the OS line. And so the further that you were out on the I line would be the more indirect you are in your communication. The further you're out on the D line, the more direct you are. And then the open versus guarded, some people tell me that I wear my emotion on my sleeve. So, I'm more in that open area. There are some folks, for instance, that I don't want to say you have to pry it out of them, but they're much more guarded in sharing how they feel. They're more guarded in sharing how their emotions are, what they think about something. Okay, so I just acknowledge that. I get it. There are some people that are more analytical. There are some people that my sister is like an off the scale relator, and I just love that. She's the caretaker. She's the one that takes care of everybody in the family. She worked in HR for 30 years before she recently retired. She was the one that people went to when they had a problem. She was the relator. She was the great listener. She was the one that, that took the time to be with the people, to do what they do. I score in the socializer area. And if you want to put in what area that when you graphed that your line went through, that's your dominant style area. That's fine in the chat area. So socializer to me means that I do need to be the front person sometimes, like doing this webinar for you or leading a meeting or doing something like that. But I can tell you, I don't want to be in front all the time. I have no desire to be in front all the time with that. And that's something that I've seen change in life with me. Over time, I've become much more of a thinker. And in running a business, I've also had to incorporate some of the director characteristics in what's going on. And so I, by the way, if you scored in the 1-1 or 1-1 or any combination of the ones, that's about 8% of the population. And Dr. Tony says that means you have a really good grasp of all 4 styles, and you may be comfortable using all 4 styles, which is pretty cool. I'll share characteristics with you here. Understand that not every socializer has these points, but there are consistencies. By the way, just to be clear, like Myers-Briggs and the other ones, one style is not better than the other. Don't go there. It's who we are, and that's it. Can we change? Dr. Tony says no. That if you score a certain way, you're probably going to be that way. My only adaptation to that is, yeah, and life experience has taught me to incorporate more of the styles, if that makes sense. So I'm using more of the characteristics of those styles. Socializers tend to be very people, and so you'll see some of these characteristics here. So I'll walk through them. Once again, not every socializer is all of these bullet points. May need more appreciation than others. I like a pat on the back, and I'll be the first to admit it. And especially on the days that are rough days, it's nice to have that. You know what, Andrew, you did good with that customer. You know what, Andrew, I appreciate what you did. Now, socializers tend to be much more comfortable giving others recognition. They tend to be great idea brainstorming people. I love brainstorming. I have ideas every day. Some of them suck, and I know it, but it's an idea. Throw it at the wall, see what happens. For me, and many socializers feel this way, I have to have fun in the work that I'm doing. If I am not having fun, I'm disengaged. And I am not the do it the same way every day type of person. I need spontaneity. I need permission to do things differently. I need to know that I have that safe space. Because if it becomes same old, you lose me. I'm not engaged. Every style has barriers. I like to bring up one. Um, Interesting. Socializer, but I do not want especially verbal appreciation. There you go. And there are some people that are very uncomfortable with verbal appreciation. So as a new supervisor, I learned that rather quickly. Some people don't want it. Some people are okay with the handwritten note, whatever that may be. For the socializer, follow through can be a big barrier. We tend to have a lot of excitement about the beginning of a project or a beginning of something. But as time goes on, I see many socializers lose their energy towards something. In a supervisory role, obviously follow through is critical. If we are asking people to do things, I'd love to be naive and say they're going to get it done and I don't need to follow through, but that's a train wreck waiting to happen. So, I'm going to challenge, especially my folks that scored in the socializer area. And by the way, you're going to see yourself in different areas of the four. Remember, follow through is critical, not only with yourself, but with others. So make sure that you follow through. We tend to make decisions more on people versus task. And like directing and thinker styles will tend to make their decisions more task oriented versus a socializer or a relator. We look at the impact on people, maybe more than the other styles do. We tend to be naturally influential. I think it's a great gift that we have. And then none of the styles like negativity. However, socializers tolerate it the least. We don't do well with negativity, and it actually tends to shut us down pretty quickly. So be aware of that. I could give you other things here. Socializers tend to have a lot of toys or different things in their work area. Socializers like to stack papers around them. This is not an organization problem. It's just a comfortable environment. We stack papers on tables, we stack them on desks, we stack them on floors. It's just comfortable. I love it. Pictures of people up in your work environment, I would expect that. The difference between a socializer and a relator is that socializers don't need to know who those people are that are in their pictures. I've got a picture of a castle up in my work environment with a bunch of people. It's the castle in either, I don't remember if it's Bavaria or Germany, that was the idea for Disney and his Cinderella's castle. There's like 40 people. I don't know who they are. I don't care. I just like the picture. I like the castle and I like having people. I just told my office mate she's probably a socializer. Words of affirmation, not my love language. Ooh, good phrasing. I love the book, The 5 Love Languages is a great book, by the way, as well, with communication. Anything else I can tell you about socializers? Yeah, let's go on. Directors, efficients. This is my most difficult style to communicate with, just because they tend to be very direct. And once again, it's actually helped me to be a little more direct in my communication. So that's a good thing. Because socializers sometimes can really go into stories and great details that, a director will be like, just the facts, man. Just tell me what I need to know. So a director's motto is get it done and get it done now. Success is based on results. I've had people tell me that they thought that this slide was very negative. I don't see that at all. I think this is sometimes who I aspire to be. They may be hesitant giving up control, which is something, that I would put on the work on part of it. Wants to be the final decision maker. And certainly I see that. The one that I really point out here is just because this style is very direct, that they can be seen as rude and abrasive. And I don't believe that the intention is to be rude and abrasive. However, I need to point out that what you intended isn't important. The result is what's important. So I used to work with a gentleman. We were partners in a business. His name was Harry. And Harry was a very direct communicating style person. And I would say to Harry, put sugar on your words. Sugar it down. You're just too direct. You're scaring people, in what you do. And so that was something that we would work on with him. He would just come out and say, blah, 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 blah. People would be like, holy crap. What was that? Tornado Harry coming through. It's just not good communication in what we're doing. They're a very bottom line communicating group. They want you to be productive. They want things done and they want it done now. Ooh, I bet small talk was hard. On Natasha's comment there. Because it's just not your style. You are, give me bullet point 1, point 2, point 3, and I'm done. And that's okay. Characteristics here tend to be very organized, usually have like their projects lined up for the day that they're going to get done in priority. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 3. Not all are super organized desks. I've seen both. Some that are, very organized in their desk and some not. I would expect that their office is not the warmest of environments. My partner, Harry, had a motto, which was, you can come into my office, but don't stay. Deliver the message and then go. Okay. One of the things that Harry taught me that I love are standing meetings. I mentioned this earlier. That's not where we go into a room and sit down and do everything, but we just go around someone's desk and we disperse information for like 5 minutes and we're done. I love that, but I can't do that all the time. As a socializer, I also need that interacting time with people. But you may want to consider standing meetings as a tool moving forward. Thinkers, factuals. Yeah, Donna says, I don't have a chair in my cubicle. I don't like people to linger. Totally get it. Harry removed the chairs from his office for a while because he didn't want people to stay. All right, get it right. Getting it wrong isn't an option for the thinkers. I love this group. Great at planning, great at organizing. You guys need more structure and routine than certainly some of the other styles, certainly a socializer. I don't need that much structure. To give you an idea, my wife is a thinker. And recently our grocery store did a remodel and things that were in aisle 1 weren't in aisle 1 anymore, and 2 and 3, et cetera, et cetera. And we walked into the grocery store and she went down the first aisle and she said, I can't do this. I can't do this. You take over. I'm gone. Her routine and her structure had been totally upset. And, think about COVID and just think about the routine and structure, that we used to have that's been disrupted. It's been hard on me as a socializing style. I can only imagine, thinking style and some of the other styles. It's tough. And then just so much unknown, as well, comes into play here. Tends to be more indirect in communication. So here I would remind you guys that if you are supervising, working with others that are this style, that you may need to ask them to tell you what's going on. Not true for all, but for some. The barrier I'd point out here is perfectionism. Thinking styles want things to be perfect, and they want, everything down to the last detail before making a decision or turning in something. And most times time doesn't allow that. And so I understand the need for perfection. And I also ask that you look at things can't always be perfect, and just, you're going to give us your best. And many times that's as good as we're going to get. But I know that's hard. Validate their accuracy because they work so hard on getting things right. And information and data, how to access it, how to work it, how to do those things is a huge strength for them. Not always, but usually a very organized work area. My wife has 2 rules that I absolutely hate, and I don't follow them, but they're really important rules for her. Her rule number 1 is there's a place for everything and everything goes in its place. This to me is almost like a sickness. It's like, no, no. That's why I have stacks of paper around me. I have a miscellaneous stack, and that's the one that drives her the most out of her mind. She's like, why? Why don't you just, because her other rule is you only touch the piece of paper once. You either file it, you trash it, or I don't know what the other option is. Well, that's my miscellaneous pile. That's why I go back and I look at it later. My thing is, like, 3 months later, I turn the stack upside down and see what's on the bottom. This drives her out of her mind. Extremely organized. Once again, not every thinker is this way, but her sock drawer is organized by color. I could go on and on and on and on. Pens are exactly 1 inch apart on her desk. To me, I like to go in and just move her pens to make her crazy. Your wife and I are part of the same hive. Okay. It's a very different style. She's much more into detail. Shopping with her is, very different than shopping for me, because she, all the details, everything has to be in place before we go shopping. Even buying something as simple as a lamp is not that simple. Well, what's the shadow on the wall going to be like? And how far away from and I'm like, you're killing me. It's a lamp. Well, no, it's not. It's more than that. And, and I acknowledge that. That's important to her. All right, the relator style I mentioned, this is my sister. Everybody gets along, is their ideal work environment. And not only is it their ideal work environment, that's their target. That's what they want. They caretake others effortlessly. They're so good at it. They're great listeners. We know that they're very caring. These are the people that you go talk with. And yes, you could have 2 dominant styles, Rachel. So I totally see that. Actually, Dr. Tony says many of us do have 2 dominant styles. These are the people that you go to if you need something. If you got a headache, you go to them. You know why? Because somewhere, either in their purse or in their desk, they've got ibuprofen, they've got Tylenol, they've got something. You're hungry, you go to them. They've got a little mini grocery store at their desk. Because they take care of others. That's what they do. And they do it really well. On the downside, they tend to neglect themselves because they're so busy taking care of each other, or taking care of others, that they tend not to take care of themselves. So I always check in with my relators. How are you doing? And they'll many times deflect it. Oh, I'm good, but so and so. And I'm like, no. Let's talk about you. What do you got going on? Because I've seen the relator go from a lamb to a lion, and it's not pretty. Because they keep stuffing things down and they don't talk about it. And then one day the cat peed on the carpet and there's the explosion. So change for them can be very difficult because change rocks the boat. It upsets routine. So change conversations, I think, are good ones to have with these folks. I just noticed my time, gang. I am really cutting it close. So really good listeners. You know, I think every team needs all the styles. And I think having too many of one style actually can be detrimental to a team. Dr. Tony talks about something called the platinum rule that I'll share with you. Do unto others as they would have done unto them. A little bit different than the golden rule. He says it's actually just an adaptation of the golden rule. So instead of doing unto others as I would have done unto me, unto them. The idea here is that if I communicate to a directing style in their style, that maybe in return they may communicate more to me in my socializing style. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it certainly has helped me in relationships in adapting my communication style to the other person. And sometimes in return, I get it back. So just a couple things that I want you to think about. You know, what would be the benefits of giving this assessment and having a discussion with your team members? And then real quick in the chat area, what's your manager's style? Don't tell me about your team members. I'll just focus on your manager right now. What's your manager's style? I've not heard the silver rule, Joseph. Interesting. I have to look that up. What's your manager's style? Because it certainly affects how you are going to communicate with them. Oh my gosh. Okay, POIs, real quick. I mentioned earlier what a POI is. So I want you to see that a key in leadership is influence, not authority. Influence. So I want you to think about your ability to influence others. And not far behind that is I want you to think about who your POIs are. Because to me, we need to get them on board first. And thank you guys for listing your different bosses, managers, styles there. So if you've got change, if you've got an initiative, by the way, continuous improvement, I'd be having conversations with these folks first, because these are the folks that people are going to go to. And you want to make sure that you have them on board, because they're going to help to lead the change or lead the different things that you're going to do. I like the quote from Patton there. I do think we can do too much of telling people what to do, but I get where he's going with it, you know, and what he's trying to tell us. And then finally, with regards to meetings here, just some thoughts on whether it's one-on-one or team meetings. I talked with you about 5 minutes with Andrew as a technique for the one-on-one meetings. Just the check-ins really do make a difference with folks. And once again, it's not formal. It's not, you know, we're here to discuss your performance. It's tell me how you're doing. Let me tell you what's going on with me type things. All right, facilitating meetings. Remember, facilitation means to guide, to guide. So many times we need to guide our meetings, not necessarily run them. I also mentioned earlier the importance of an agenda. I will tell you, my opinion is if you don't have an agenda, don't have a meeting. And I'd like that agenda out 2 days before, if at all possible. And I do understand that there can be last minute things that come in, and I get it. With regards to meetings, opening, here I'm talking about start on time. Nothing drives me more crazy than saying, oh, Andrew's late, we're gonna wait for him. Here's my theory. I'm gonna punish everyone else in the room for coming on time to wait for Andrew. Does that make sense to anybody? It doesn't make sense to me. Andrew, by the way, has the responsibility for catching up on what he missed, not the person leading the meeting or not someone else. And that needs to be made clear. A handout that I gave you has to do with ground rules for meetings. We actually just adapted this, a form of this for our board of directors, our board of trustees for the library. And I know that our director was taking it in for the staff as well. So if you have ground rules, take a look at them. If you don't, I would recommend that you do it because it really does help to shape behavior and what's going on. Time management is critical. One of the things I like about an agenda is it lists how much time we're going to spend on something. And then when that time is up, we're done. Or we get an agreement that we're going to go 5 minutes more or whatever that may be. And once again, I do agree with Zig Ziglar. I think a lot of times in meetings, it's not a lack of time, it's a lack of facilitation or a lack of direction that gets us into trouble. And then I do think you should have some type of evaluation form for your meetings and get feedback. You know, what did we like about the meeting? Or what are we doing well? What structurally can we change with that? I think it's very dangerous to assume that because people say nothing, that they think everything is good. And then if we've made an agreement that we're going to do something, I think that an action plan is a great tool as a follow through to make sure that those things get done. Give me a yes or no. I do have a sample action plan that I could send to Mary Lee to distribute. Would you guys like that? I did not include it in the original handouts. I was just thinking I do have that. I've actually got one for one-on-one meetings and one for team meetings. So I think you're going to get two different versions of it. Okay. All right, real quick, because I know I'm bordering on your time now, and I apologize. What's one thing you learned that you think you can immediately apply? And go ahead, put that in the chat area, and I'll look for your answers there. One thing that you learned in the program you think you can immediately apply. And then I'm going to put up my thank you for attending. I am so blessed to have you guys come to my program. So thank you so much. And I want to look for your comments real quick. And then also I want to bring Marilee in and we'll go ahead and look at wrapping this up. I've got different communication styles, using benefit language, styles, giving goals, roles, and explanations, benefit language, sending an effective message, sharing the why, good for you. I want to be better communicating that I've understood an email, not just a will do. Oh, thank you, Katie. I appreciate the thank you. I plan on thinking about the saying it's not what you do, but why you do it, and using that more. Good, because why ties into motivation. Communicating to be respectful of other styles, the behavior style evaluation, comments. All right, I think that recognizing incremental change as effective change. Ooh, nice, Natalie. Okay, all right, Marilee, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. I'm probably the last one to wish you this, but Happy New Year, and let's make the most out of 2021. Take care.
Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. It was wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you.